Hi class, my name is Charlemagne Adams. I did my project on the basic Christian community of Hawaii. I studied their cell group models, which is basically their form of Bible study. So I chose to study the BCC cell groups mainly because I got an invitation from a friend of mine maybe about 5 or 6 years ago. I continued to refuse to attend her Bible studies mainly because I wasn't really comfortable discussing religion or really hearing religious views. It's not something that I'm comfortable with. I'm of the Catholic faith. So if you look at the picture below, that's kind of my view, my own ethnocentric view on church. It's what I'm comfortable with. Um, I'm not going to say that I don't agree with other people's religions because that's not what it is. It's just that if you look at this picture, that's kind of what I'm familiar with. So, by studying the BCC cell groups and attending these Bible studies, it forced me to step out of my comfort zone, which was a good thing. It also forced me to explore an open approach to faith-based learning and learning their cell group motto and learning their way of worship and learning more, even though they were sharing the same views that I had, learning different perspectives and different interpretations of religion was something interesting for me. And lastly, it allowed me to explore alternative forms of worship within the Catholic and Christian faith. Now, this was probably the most interesting part, um, considering the fact that I'm Catholic. The music in a Catholic church are not necessarily the most exciting forms of music and worship. So, hearing their different music style and hearing music that was similar to the music that I hear on the radio, it was really refreshing for me and it was very enjoyable. So, just to provide a different perspective, I would fall in the category of the people worshiping on the left, whereas the BCC cell groups would be more of the people worshiping on the right. And as you can see, their hands are in the air, just two totally different types of worship. They are smiling, they look more vibrant, they're standing up. So, if you can see, it really did push me out of my comfort zone to kind of be open to that sort of thing. But it was great because they sure looked happy and they were really happy, and it was good for me to learn a different perspective. Finding my way in was really easy considering the fact that I did receive an invitation. My key informant and gatekeeper was Melissa, a friend of mine. Gaining rapport was really easy as well because, they're a church group, so they're constantly recruiting new members, not in a forceful way, but mainly word to mouth, and informally as well. Just kind of, hey, you want to come to my Bible study group? We're meeting this Friday at 6 p.m., that sort of thing. And every group was welcoming, which is a great thing, and it was helpful for my studies as well. Another thing that was interesting was that they are open to people of all faiths and all forms of religion. I got to meet people who are of different faiths, Christian faith, for example, and belong to different congregations, but they just preferred to be a part of this specific Bible study group because they like the formatting of it or they like the people, which is interesting too. They're also willing to answer any and all of my questions. They didn't try at all to force their religious views or practices. They mainly presented their scriptures, they presented ideas and allowed for discussion and were open to discussion, which was great. It wasn't that sort of format where this is what we believe and this is what you guys need to do in your life and this is how you're supposed to practice this religion and so forth. No, it was nothing like that. It was a really great experience. More on the history of BCC cell groups. They were created in 1984 by a brother and sister group, Mr. Dumanag and Miss Jasol, who are unfortunately deceased fairly recently within the past couple of years. And I was hoping I would get to speak with them, but that did not happen, unfortunately. But I did find that the BCC cell groups are a lay movement of the Catholic Church, which is a big thing. They're fully recognized by the Catholic diocese, and they also operate under the principles of the Catholic Church. With that being said, they're also held to be accountable as far as confidentiality goes and being ethical in the way that they present their religious teachings and their religious discussions. So they have a big emphasis on confidentiality as far as what people share and not bringing all of those things that you hear of outside of the cell group. The BCC cell groups are also based on a 2,000-year-old principle started by Jesus' 12 disciples. And this goes back to a time period when people were not allowed to worship freely. They were banned from going into temples and worshiping there. So a lot of them would meet privately in their homes, and they would, they would practice their religion there in order to perpetuate that religious style. Like I said before, they're open to all faiths, even though they are a movement of the Catholic Church. Moving on to the cell group concept, they basically meet every week. They could meet weekly, or they could just meet once a month. Some of them do meet just once a month. They're usually led by a group leader or a facilitator, mainly because that person is that main contact person should other people have questions or want to join. They would contact that group leader. And the format of a normal group session normally goes like this. They start with praise and worship. When you enter, there's some music playing, some religious music. They start with a short opening prayer. And then they share 2 Bible study readings. So these scriptures are based on what is expected to be read at Mass on the following Sunday. So these are previously researched online, usually by the group leader or facilitator, and then 2 volunteers will read these readings, and then there will be some Bible sharing and discussion after that. Another thing that they do, which I really enjoyed, was sharing the closest moment you felt with God during the week. And this is both positive and negative. As far as what people shared, some people would share, for example, that they were able to spare somebody a few dollars for a meal, and that made them feel closer to God. But at the other end of the spectrum, there are people that would share negative things, for example, just having a really crappy week, and they felt that that was their closest moment to God because they were able to kind of sit down and look back and just be thankful for what they do have and what did work out for them during the week. So it was interesting to kind of see those different ends of the spectrum and what people were feeling at the time. And usually the night would end with fellowship, which is basically just a talk story session, finding out a little bit more about the people around us, and lots of food. So I utilized 2 different research methods. The first was participant observation. Like I said, I attended 4 different cell groups at 4 locations: Kaneohe, Kahalu, Kalihi, and Kapolei. And each group had their own approach to the cell group model. They had their own style. And then moving on to the informal interviews, I interviewed 2 different people. I asked them questions for clarification, and I also maintained dialogue with my key informant for further information and explanation. She was a really good person to be in contact with because sometimes I'd have questions after I would leave the cell groups, and so she was kind of that person that would help me out. Lastly, I kept a journal. I didn't write while the people were talking in the cell groups. In fact, I didn't even bring it in with me because I just felt it was more for me to kind of take notes, and I felt like it was disrespectful for the other people there. So usually I would take notes after I left each session to remind me of what I encountered. Moving on to the observations. These observations were based on participant observation. The first main point that I wanted to discuss was age variation, and this was a really big thing. For example, the young adult groups, I noticed that their discussions were more of current issues that pertain to young adult lives. For example, drug addiction was a big one. Economic hardship, considering the fact that usually young adults are kind of in that point in their life where they're not really financially stable yet, as opposed to more middle-aged adults. And so a lot of times they would talk about economic hardships and job loss and that sort of thing. Another topic was suicide, or friends that were thinking about committing suicide. And a big one too was marital problems. And to move along to the older adults, their discussions were more focused on hardships and the well-being of others. So they're focusing their time and energy, their prayers towards people of towards other people, family members, their children, friends. And usually their concerns and discussions were based on health concerns, the well-being of their children or grandchildren, or world issues such as the choices of our government officials. Some big topics that they like to share about was, abortion and um, a topic that's kind of fresh in our minds, same-sex marriage. Another main point that I noticed is that people seem really comfortable about sharing. No form of disrespect was observed. Everyone appeared to be tuned in. Everybody was respectful when people would talk. Comments that people made were appropriate and non-offensive. In fact, I found them to be very supportive. And lastly, the discussions and group suggestions were encouraged. Some people presented some type of concern for a friend or family member or for themselves. People are really willing to share, and the person sharing was willing to hear what people wanted to share, which I really enjoyed. Some observations on my informal interviews. I interviewed a facilitator of one of the groups. His name was Jay. He was raised in the Catholic faith, but unfortunately, he turned to drugs as a teen, and he shared some of those experiences with me. He also shared that his mom attended cell groups regularly ever since he was a young man, and she would pray for his recovery. And years passed, and he came back to his cell groups, and he felt like it changed his life. When he returned, he decided that he was going to share his life experiences, encourage others to, you know, get better. Paula is a more middle-aged woman. She belongs to the same group. And she shared with me that she felt really supported by the group. She shared her experience of going through a really horrible divorce, and that the cell group really provided that support that she needed. And also that because divorces are kind of frowned upon in the Catholic Church, they're almost non-existent. I don't want to say they're non-existent, but they're not common in the Catholic faith. She felt isolated at one point in her life, but the group supported her through that process. And so in turn, she reciprocates that same support to her members and other members that she brings in. And she also hopes her experiences will influence others. So it was good to learn from these two and learn how cell groups change their lives. So just tying it all together. Everyone knows that religious groups are easily targeted by society. There's a lot of jokes that people make based on religious groups being overly zealous. People claim that they're forceful in trying to gain believers. They have outrageous practices, whether it be requesting large sums of money from their parishioners or members of the church, or forcing people to do labor for churches and that sort of thing. Or just overall that they feel that religious groups are disrespectful of other religions and other people's practices. We've heard of all of these things together, but I'm happy to say that this BCC cell group organization was very, very good. They didn't fall into those categories, and that was not the case from my experience. And my final thoughts were that attending these groups, again, like I said in the beginning, forced me to leave my comfort zone and venture out and explore a little. And it opened my mind to different religious views within my own faith. And understanding the cell group model, I discovered new forms of music worship that I liked and enjoyed. And I also learned that people of different beliefs can still share similar views and values. Like I was saying earlier, meeting people who enjoyed coming to this cell group, even though they belong to a different type of faith, different religious backgrounds, that everybody could come together and kind of share similar views and be supportive of each other in life and in faith. I thought that was a really great thing. I hope that you enjoyed my presentation. If you have any questions, let me know, and I wish you the best of luck during this semester. Thanks.